Welcome to Changelog, where we explore the latest updates, enhancements, and changes to New Relic itself. In each episode, we dig into the new features and functionalities as told by the people who envisioned, shaped, and even coded them. We discuss the inspiration and the data behind the development, as well as common use cases and applications. I'm Leon Adato, one of the DevRel advocates here at New Relic, and joining me today are... Let me get the... There we go. There's the layout. Let's start off with Alex Jones, Senior Product Manager.
Nice to meet you. I'm Alex.
It's nice to see you too. And joining me again, returning, is Emory Zhao, Product Marketing Manager. How you doing?
Good. Happy to be back.
Okay, so I know that we're here to talk about a particular thing, but before we do that, we are not just a bunch of talking heads. We have a life. We have a whole bunch of things behind. So I want to talk, first of all, what does your title mean? Like, what does it mean that you do? But also, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What's exciting? What side projects do you have going? Just, something that you really want to talk about here. Let's see. Alex, I'm going to start off with you.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm the Senior Product Manager for the Query Language Development. And what that entails is helping you ask any type of question of your data within New Relic. So if you're trying to pull out some type of analysis or trying to figure something out, we want to make sure the language you use, instead of SQL, you're using NRQL, that you can do it. And what gets me out of bed, I myself actually like rollerblading with with skates, so the 2 and 2 wheels, and there's a good little flat piece of sidewalk that I like skating down, so it gets me out of bed in the morning.
Did you literally have to describe regular skates as inline skates, but they're 2x2? Like, those
some people don't
skates,
know.
Alex.
Some people don't know, man.
Those are... Oh my gosh, I am so old. Okay, all right, fine. I'm never gonna... I can't even process that. While I'm trying to figure out how to feel about things, Emory, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm product marketing manager. So what that means is I try to figure out what Alex does and then translate it for normal people because I don't quite understand it myself. So, but no, seriously, I'm product marketing. I handle our telemetry data platform and network monitoring solution. What do I do in my spare time? I said this last time, but I guess I'll change it up because I'm into new things. I am really getting into running, so trying to do a marathon, or not marathon, but maybe like half marathon or something, and see if I can survive at the end. So I'm trying to prep for that. And I hate running in the summer, so I'm glad it's getting colder because I sweat less while I train. Yeah.
Okay, and for those people who need an explanation like Alex, running is like walking really fast.
Yeah,
Still
a little faster. Right. Maybe not as fast as someone who's going full speed on down a hill on rollerblades, but...
Okay. All right. So, Alex, you mentioned NRQL, and for those people who might think it's a great name for a cute, fluffy little bunny or kitten or something, it is a really cute name for a kitten. But in fact, it stands for New Relic Query Language. Yes, it's pronounced NRQL, and it's the bedrock on which many dashboards and alerts and customizations and honestly the value for a lot of our customers is built. So when we recently announced that we're going to make some updates and enhancements, it grabbed a lot of folks' attention, and rightly so. But I want to break this down slowly. So for those people who are watching this who may not have heard about NRQL before, can one of you give me the NRQL for New Relic newbies version? I love alliteration.
Yes, so the NRQL New Relic newbies is essentially what you're trying to do is you're storing all this data in New Relic, and you'd like to pull out this data in certain capacities. Maybe you have a lot of data that shows how fast your website's going, or your app, see what sites are being visited the most. You don't want to pull everything, but you want to filter it down. So using the query language, you can say, pull only this data or pull that data, combine it together, put it into a chart so I can easily read it and put it on dashboards, create alerts off of it, and so on.
Got it. And an important point for people who, again, might be a little bit new to the New Relic platform, there's a lot of data that is being collected, and not all of it is necessarily being displayed, and certainly not all of it is being alerted on. So just be aware that NRQL is kind of an essential technique or piece of the puzzle, because our quick starts and our dashboards, the pre-built dashboards have some of it, but there's going to be a lot of it that you might care about that doesn't have something built to it yet, and that's where NRQL comes in. All right.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you'll note that there's a lot of pre-made dashboards, and every single widget or alert, the foundation of it has some type of NRQL written out that says, here's what I want to display, or here's what I want to alert off of.
Excellent. All right. So again, for the newbie, can you give us a quick run through of just a couple of simple NRQL things?
So one of the most, the layout of a NRQL query is you could say where you're pulling your data from, and this is usually stored in different events. A simple one is transaction. So these are all the transactions happening on your app. And what you can do is you can select, let's say, duration of how long it took for the transaction to take place. So we can simply just select this, and we're going to have a list of all these, how long these transactions took. So you can see that it took milliseconds for something to actually happen. And other things you can add on is say you have the you can sometimes get the sum of, like, you can sum things up. You can figure out which. Actually, I'm trying to think of a good example. Another example that would be really good is, say, your page views. So who is viewing your pages? So, for example, you can see what URLs are being called, and then again, you can look at how long it took to load that page. Oh, let's go duration. And other things that you can do is you can group these in a way, because this is just a very long list. But say I just want to say, give me the count of all my pages, and group them, or we call it facet in NRQL. And what you're going to do now is see, oh, it looks like this particular demo page, this is being called 6.5 thousand times in the past hour. So it's really great. It can give you a sense of what's getting the most traction on your app and how long things are taking. There's so many different ways of digging into this data that we're excited to allow with the NRQL language.
Wonderful. Okay, and I have to ask, for people who know SQL or another query language, who are familiar with, whether it's MySQL or Postgre or whatever it is. So, I mean, my first thinking is some of these commands are backwards, right? Like, I start with, I do not start with, from. I start select star from table name, group by, blah, blah. Like that's a thing. So do you have to do it in this order? Can I lean on my SQL background, or is it going to really start to scream at me if I do that?
Oh, well, we can try it out right now. We click enter. It works. So you can switch the select and from clauses, and it'll still work.
Okay.
I just myself prefer having from at the beginning.
Okay, no worries. I had to ask that question for people. All right, so that's a very quick primer on what's new. What's existing for people who don't know about it. But what have we changed? Like, what is this big announcement that we are here to talk about today?
Yeah, so we're really excited because we're adding new capabilities to enhance how you can do your string parsing. What I mean by that is, for example, this right here is a string. It has the URL page. Another example of a string is if you go to your logs. So logs are very long strings, and they contain different data. They can have timestamps, they can have user IDs or item IDs or values. And what we're announcing now is that we're adding functionality to parse out those fields, define them as a variable within your query, and then do other enhanced string parsing functions to really manipulate and get the most use out of your data.
Okay. So that explains what, and we are absolutely going to show some of that in a minute. But before we do that, I think it's important to talk about why, to put some context around this. Why is this critical for our customers and users? What value does this bring, and why should people be watching this saying, "Oh my gosh, I need to try that right now"? Like, what's the compelling aspect of this?
Well, I think the most compelling thing is that people are getting a lot of data in different formats, and this allows you to be very flexible with whatever data you send in and pull out the data that you really need to set up alerts, to create dashboards. I think the big example here, especially for logs, is that you're able to pull out specific aspects such as all of the items that you sold in a cart and checkout page, pulling out those items, knowing what page they were sold on, and then knowing how much someone paid for that item. And now, instead of having to dig into that and use complex ways of pulling that data out, we've simplified it and made it so that you could quickly write your own query that pulls out this data and can therein show trends of how well you're doing in your company. And that's always going to be beneficial, because digging into the data and understanding it is going to give you more insights to your own business and to see how you need to improve.
Okay, so at this point, I'm sold. I want to see it. Let's run through a few of these examples so that people can put a picture along with that explanation.
Great. So first, let's go to, and I'm going to switch up to my my way of working. But from logs, we're just going to select any of our messages that we get, and you can actually do a select star now, which is a fun little addition. But we're going to say where our message is like post to carts. So this is a lot of messages that is going to be on the cart and checkout page. So you'll see here we have post to carts, and if I copy this so you can actually see the full part of it, you'll see we have the URL that the person went to. So they were on this cart and checkout page. The item that they're purchasing is this item right here, has this long string, and it says unit price 15. Now, if we wanted to figure out, all right, how much did each item sell, or how much did each item gain over the past hour, we'd want to pull out these values. And there's actually a complex way of doing this today called regex capture.
You lost me at regex. Like, I shouldn't say that. I love regex, and I really appreciate it. But I think that a lot of people just their eyes just rolled up into their head, like, oh my god, I don't want to do this. So yeah. Okay.
So as you can see, you'd have to have the value post to carts, and you'd have to define it, and with this question mark P and defining it, and it's complicated. Honestly, I myself am not a developer and do not know how to actually write this myself. So what we've added is a new function called anchor parse. So for example, we say a parse for short is the name of the function. You write the string you'd like to parse, so in this case, message. And let's just do a really simple one where we would like to get everything after where it says post to carts. So we're going to say post to carts, and then we're going to put a star. And what that's going to do is it's going to say find any string that starts with post to carts, and then where the star is, pull out those values and post them for me, or put them in this query. So when I run it, you'll see that the second one here has anything after post to carts. So you're like, oh, this is great, but we want to pull out individual aspects of it, right?
Sure.
So let's actually go in here and say, all right, item ID. It looks like item ID would be the first thing we want to pull out. And for example, we'd have what we want to do is we want to say there's anything before item ID we don't care about, anything after we don't care about. So that actually will denote with a wildcard value. So there's a wildcard value. I just copied it. We want item ID. And then we want to pull out a value. So we're using the asterisk. And then we put whatever's afterwards, which is another quote, and then a wildcard. So I know this is a lot of kind of more technical, but essentially what these wildcards are saying on each side is I don't care what's on either side of this item ID. I just know that if you find this particular layout, item ID in this format, pull out the item ID, so the star, and then anything else will be perfectly fine on either side.
I mean, there's a syntax to it, but I just want to jump in here and say it beats the hell out of regular expressions. I feel like in terms of
Right.
having to
Yeah.
do this, it's
It makes it way easier just looking like you don't have to look through all the URLs, for example, and then find your
Exactly.
item ID. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this isn't much further than just doing file name wildcards. I mean, it's a little bit off of that, but so far you have not overwhelmed me in terms of anything like that.
Well, one thing you can see is now we've pulled out this item ID. It's very easy to do. And what I'm actually excited about is what you can do is just post in that entire string that you have. So you'll see that here's this post to carts, and then just replace. All right, I know this part wants to be extracted, right? It's a star. This one is the item ID part, put a star. Unit price, put a star. And one thing to note is that this is on actually a different line, right? So it looks like there's actually, a hidden value, like a next line n right there. So I'm just going to say, all right, whatever's happening afterwards, we don't care about. But this is so much easier. I just put a star in all the values that I want to pull out, and now I have this in an array. So each of these values have been extracted, the URL, the item ID, and so forth. But what's hard is that I actually can't use this array that easily, because I want to say, give me the sum of all my the unit prices. I want to know the total summation, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. So what we've actually introduced now is something called NRQL variables. So what NRQL variables is it's defining a variable or defining multiple variables in the very beginning of your query and then reusing that name as many times as you want. So it uses the syntax with, and then you'd have some values here, and then as, and you define them as whatever you want to call it. So let's paste in what we just had. We had anchor parse. We pulled out 3 values. So this first value was the URL. The second one's the item ID. The third one was the unit price. Well, let's name it that. Let's name it URL, the item ID, and the unit price. And you can name things anything you want. You can't start with a number, so I can't say 3 unit price. It's going to give you a red line and say you can't do that. But other than that, you can name it whatever you want. And I really like this because sometimes you can rename things that make them more readable. So someone can come into your query and say, oh, this is the item ID. So what's great is that let's just take these 3 things, and instead of showing the message, which is that big string, we're just showing these 3 things. We run this, and voila. You have the URL, the item ID, and the unit price all split up individually because you parsed out these variables using anchor parse.
Got it. And that should be familiar for anybody who speaks any, structured query language. The as is certainly not overwhelming or shocking. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but it sounds like the next thing you can do is sum and, sum or average some of these numbers and then facet or group by, for those people who are, again, familiar with other query languages, group by any of those other items.
That is correct. So you're skipping to the next slide, which is great. One thing to note is that this right here, this unit price, is a string function. Or sorry, it is a string because I just pulled out a value from a string, and what do you get? You get a string. So what you can do is actually either say, this is, you can change it to a numeric value. So do numeric and then change that. And that's just going to change it into a numeric value, which you don't see it change here, but that this is helpful because if I want to, sum up all of this, I can only sum numbers, right?
Right.
So let's just, get the sum right now and say, hey, how much do we earn? Awesome. We made $81,000 in the past hour. So it says since 1 hour ago, which is the default. But we want to know, what items made us the most money? Well, we can do that, like you said, group by. So you say facet, which is our way of grouping, and we can facet it by, let's say, item ID. We facet by item ID, and I like actually the table format rather than billboard. And there we go. One thing you can see is that now that you faceted, you can see which item has gained the most money, and you can change this into a bar chart to be able to see what percentage. It looks like 45% of your sales is coming from this one item, which is great. One of the another feature that we have added, which is, it's small, but oh man, I love using this, the if function. So for example, this is our item that we have the most of, which is this long string. We can actually do an if function to say, all right, if the item ID is equal to, this particular item number. Let's say that this was a, it was a blue item. So we're going to call this blue. And then otherwise, we can call it red. And I don't know, might as well name it something. So let's say as color. What this is going to do is it's creating an if-then statement, which is a true-false statement. And if it's true, it's going to give you one result. If it's false, it's going to give you another. Okay. So when we run this, we now can just say, we know that 45% is our blue item, this one item. And what's the rest? It's 55%. This was able to be done before, but it was a little tricky on how you had to group it. This if function is super helpful because it just makes it really easy to do other, you can be more creative with it and say, all right, let's say, if this numeric value is greater than $15, call it expensive. And if it was less than $15, what are we going to call it? Cheap. So you can now define in the select clause by faceting. You can use this if functionality to really give you a sense of, let's go to table view. Yeah, we can just get a list of here are all the things that are cheap or expensive. It's helpful in that sometimes you have data that isn't set up the right way, and you can rename it, and you can have these decision trees that really help shape the data to give you some really good views.
Really cool. And yeah, those are some really powerful capabilities. To put it back into monitoring and observability context, the idea that you can, first of all, take, we get monitoring information out of logs, we get it out of traces. It's not always in the right format. It's sometimes not normalized in a way that it makes it manageable. So the ability to do that within the NRQL query, within the query that it, so the data comes in raw, and to be able to normalize it and deal with it, and then trigger on it, whether that's, again, a chart is pretty and it's a great way of knowing what happened in the past, but being able to trigger alerts on it, being able to really act on it is pretty powerful stuff for people who've been, who are responsible for systems, but don't have any control of the sources of the data or the framework or the context of the data that's coming in. So I can absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah. And so I'll show another example of how we could parse data that's not just log data. So let's go back to our page URL. So page view. These are people that are viewing a particular page, and we can see what pages they're actually looking at. Well, let's change this around, and let's say I want to figure out what these domains are after the .com. So we actually have a new function called substring, and also another function called position. So I'll describe these, but we have the page URL, and we want to figure out the position of the page URL where we see .com. And it's going to tell us the number that we see this exact string value. Let's do .com with a slash. So we'll run this, and we see different numbers. Oh, they're all at 29 because they're 29 down, and this is where it starts right here.
Right.
Note that it actually starts at 0. So if I do HTTP, it's all going to say 0 because it's 0 based. So it starts counting at 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down.
Right.
So that's the
For
first
anyone
thing.
who's used the find function in a spreadsheet of your choice, it's going to work about the same way. But yeah, I can see where this is going to be really useful in combination with other things. Okay, keep going. Keep going.
Yep. Another function that we added is substring. So what substring will do is it's going to from what you've defined as a string, you're going to pull out a certain certain values from that string. And so the first number could say, where do you want to start extracting values? So let's say after 29, let's start pulling out all these values. And so if I run this, oh, there you go. At 29, we realized it was .com, so it's pulling from 29. Past that, it's going to pull out all these values. .com, login. It takes these values that you looked for here. And one thing you might realize is that, well, what if the .com moves or changes? And that's where you can actually incorporate these two together. So I'm going to keep these both, on the same line, but here I'm going to have substring. Instead of putting 29, I'm going to say, all right, look for the position of this and plus, let's do 4 because there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's 5.
Right.
There's 5 different 5 characters, correct. But one thing you'll see here is now we have a way of getting the position of where everything after .com, pulling out the substring of that, and then we can combine these two together, substring and position, to make it really easy for you to dig into any of your strings. 2 more fun little functions we have, which are pretty easy. Upper. And upper is pretty easy. It's just going to uppercase all of your values. So you'll see that now these are all uppercase. And then similarly, there's also lower. And everything already is lowercase, so it'll just look the same.
Right, but we've been around the block a couple of times, so we know what those do, and when they're useful and when they're not. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. For example, upper is useful because this position function is looking for an exact match. So sometimes what you could do is you could say, all right, uppercase this value. And now, no matter what, it will match because everything's uppercase. Because you might have the first letter capitalized or lowercase and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, those are the 2 things we're really excited about. The first being anchor parse, being able to bind these variables using NRQL variables with the with as. You can have multiple captures within this one query, and you can use an if function. And then as you saw here, position, substring, upper, and lower are more string functions that are additionally available.
All right, so I think this takes us to what I affectionately call the lightning round. Any final thoughts, parting ideas, sports analogies, anything you want to do? I'm going to start off, though, and first of all, remind everyone that regular expressions, regex, is still worth learning. It's still a good skill to have, if nothing else, to impress your friends, relatives, coworkers, and things like that. But it's actually better if you don't have to. So it's, these new capabilities in NRQL will allow you to, will allow monitoring engineers to have better control over the data and ensure that we're able to display and act on the information that matters when it matters. And I think that is just an amazing thing. Emory, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just looking at, the example you used, we're talking about like transactions, right? We're looking at sales essentially. So it's part of like, you have to think of like all this data you ingest or New Relic ingest. It's not just like IT data, stuff that developers or, people who work in tech care about, the technology care about. It's like business data. This is data that you can use to make better business decisions. Now, in the example that what's selling the most, right? Do we need to promote that item more, right? And that's going to be your bottom line. You're going to be able to make business decisions, better business decisions faster, and make the correct ones. And obviously, you're going to if successful, you're going to end up making more money. So you got to really like NRQL's complicated, and I don't even know close to what Alex knows, but that's something that like really attracts me. I'm like, oh, now I know that I can have the power to do this, and I should learn how to do that because it will, if I wanted to run my own business and I was using New Relic, I definitely want to have my even my like the guys who make decisions get that data correctly, understand it better. So yeah.
Nice. Okay, Alex, take us home.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and to reiterate what Emory said, there's a lot more you can do, and it's a lot easier. I think that's the biggest thing. Being able to be not fully knowledgeable of how you use NRQL, but able to run a quick query to say, find all the times that there was an error message. Things like that are very helpful, and you need to know, especially in times of any incidents or something is going slower or faster with your system. You need to know how to figure that out and how to respond to it quickly. And if you can quickly write your own queries and it's understandable and easily teachable, that's going to help your business solve their biggest questions sooner. So we're also very open to getting all different types of feedback from customers. If they want to try and do more with NRQL, we are all ears.
Wonderful. All right. Alex, Emory, thank you so much for joining me on Changelog today. I appreciate you carving out some time from your busy schedule to share all of this.
No problem. Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Same.
I also want to thank everyone watching. There is an overwhelming choice of video content to binge on these days, and we want to thank you for using some of your precious time to binge on Changelog. If you've enjoyed the show today, please don't forget to subscribe so you can get notifications for when new episodes drop. For New Relic Changelog, I'm Leon Adato.